Hi, thanks for joining us today. My name is Matt Denhart. For 6 years, I was on the staff of the Center for College Affordability and Productivity, and I continue to write about labor and higher education issues with Professor Vetter. And joining me today is David Ridpath, author of Tainted Glory. Also, we have Michael Malesic over here and Jonathan Rowe. Everyone here has some affiliation at some point with CCAP, but today we're here to talk about Dave's new book. This is the second video in a two-part series. And today what we're going to focus on is how athletics affects the average student on campus. Often we hear from university administrators or from alumni or just fans that, students come here because of athletics. They love it, they go to every game. If we didn't have a strong athletics program, students wouldn't be satisfied. Something that many people don't know is that a large portion of student fees at many universities go to subsidize the athletic program directly. And those are often justified by presidents and athletic directors as something that the students demand. Dave and I have researched this in a number of studies, and Dave is continuing the work, so we're here to talk about it. But Dave, first, can you tell me, what was your experience at Marshall? How did the students, what did athletics mean to the students at Marshall?
Well, I think in some ways, Matt, it was overstated. I mean, there was a group of students that certainly did like athletics at Marshall, and it was fairly popular. But I do think in the 90s when I was there that interest started to wane, not just at Marshall but nationwide. You're starting to see the advent of technology and the fact that really generations past me or just had other things to do. It's not as big of a pool as it used to be. When I was growing up, you were able to watch one game on TV, and it was restricted by the NCAA until the famous court case in the 80s. Now, kids may want to stay home and watch Oklahoma, Texas instead of going to a Marshall, Middle Tennessee State game. And that was kind of starting to happen. The fact they had some success, I think, was more important to the community. It's a school of 16,000, 17,000 kids. And to say that was a major factor in enrollment, fundraising, applications, anything like that was not true. There was a certain, small group, but overall, no, it did not have that big of an impact.
Right. And to explain the research that Dr. Ridpath and I have done together, we surveyed students actually here at Ohio University, where we're on campus today, to ask, do they know that they're paying large student fees? Second, what do they think of it? Third, what factor did athletics play in your decision to attend this institution? And contrary to what we've been hearing from the athletics department and presidents of the university and things, we found that most students didn't know that they were paying such large fees. Second, they didn't want to pay anything more.
Right.
And third, very few said that they came to this university because of athletics. So that's just one institution, and Dave has plans to continue that research, which is great. Well, let's expand it out here now to the panel that we have. Jonathan, you were a student at Ohio University for 4 years. Tell me, on the average year, first off, are you a sports fan?
I would generally say, yeah. I like sports, although when I was studying, it really wasn't that big of a draw to me. I'd rather actually get a good grade in a class, so I spent a lot of time studying. Plus, I was studying engineering, which is not exactly something that you have a lot of extra time dealing with, to do other things. Even though coming in I liked football, I liked basketball, I really didn't have much time. And in fact, to be honest, I was one of the few that probably knew that was somewhat paying for the sports. And to be honest, I would have rather had the money in my pocket to spend on other things, and I wouldn't have minded to actually pay per game that I went. That would have been better for me, I thought.
Right. So the way that a lot of these work is you pay one large student fee. A lot of times you don't exactly, they call it the general fee, you don't exactly know what areas of the university it's applied to. In most universities, or at least a very large number, a lot of that goes to athletics. And what Jonathan's saying is that he'd rather pay for each game that he wants to go to rather than essentially buying season tickets for 4 years. Michael, I know you're a big sports fan. Michael and I go way back. So you might have a little different take. When you were a student, what role did intercollegiate athletics play for you on campus?
I really enjoyed sports like you noted. I went to quite a few football games and basketball games, but I think as I got older and was going through college, I didn't go to as many. I was involved in different organizations. Grades were very important, I didn't have the time. So it definitely got to the point where I would rather just pay per contest, or per sport each year. I did go to baseball games as well, but I'd rather pay per sport, I think.
Does it matter, Michael, that knowing what the funding models of most athletic departments, if Ohio University would make that decision tomorrow, they would not be able to have near the budget that they have today. In fact, it would probably be less than half. So, so sports would be dropped, probably would have to go to a lower division. Is that something that, from your perspective, would that have affected your decision to come to Ohio U?
I don't think it would affect my decision to come to Ohio University. I'd be disappointed, growing up in Athens as well.
Sure.
I've gone to so many contests, so it would be a hole, a void. But I think life would move on. Sports aren't everything, and I think so many of my friends were also, Penn State fans, Ohio State, Notre Dame. So they didn't really go to too many of the contests. So it was hard to try to find people to go to games with as well. So I don't think it would have made a huge difference.
Yeah, I certainly think your generation, that we see on this campus, because of the technology and the proliferation of games, people are fans of other schools, and they're certainly fans of schools that get that mass media exposure.
Correct.
And I don't know if your mid-major schools like a Marshall or Ohio can ever catch up.
John, what's your take? So you are a sports fan. You like football. You went to some games. A more serious student.
Yeah. To be honest, after reading Tainted Glory, my enthusiasm for sports definitely waned. Once you pull back the mask. But actually, one thing I've often wondered, and this is perhaps just based on my own experience, so I don't know how general this is, but it seems to me that alumni are more interested in the athletics because of it, rather than the current students, because it seems to be like one of the few remaining ties that binds them to their alma mater. And I don't know if Dr. Ridpath, if that's true generally, or what effect that has. And really, it's the students at many of these schools that wind up paying for it, but it's the alumni who kind of seem to be the ones that are demanding the mid-major athletics.
Yeah, I think that there's a certain part of that, but I do think in the SEC, a lot of the SEC presidents who I've spoken to will tell you that most of the problems are coming from people who didn't go to school there, who have latched on, and this has become their program, whether they're from the community or just people in the state who never had aspirations of ever going to that school. So you do have that issue, and I do think that the alumni connections and things are great, but I think universities need to make a better effort of having connections in other ways instead of just using athletics as the main marketing vehicle to do that. I mean, it is great. It's great when your school is shown on TV and things, but what does that translate to? And I think it's certainly the case of Colorado State, where I just spoke at. It hasn't translated into greater donations and more alumni engagement. Certainly hasn't made academics better or given them more money. So I do think that sometimes that can be overstated, but yes, alumni and booster involvement, while many times that money is great and can be used for good things, it sometimes causes more problems than it's worth. And certainly I discussed that in Tainted Glory with how a major booster got way too involved and started using the athletics program as his own personal toy, if you will.
Right. So to close out, I want to just sort of bring this back to a little bit of a broader perspective. So if we think about higher education generally, tuition costs continue to rise faster than inflation, faster than really any other sector. But what's shocking is that these student fees increase faster than tuition, and a lot of people don't realize. So even in states where they sometimes freeze tuition, the fees are allowed to float, and the fees rise faster than tuition. So it's sort of this backhanded increase. So as higher education becomes more expensive and fewer are able to afford it, is it the sense of this panel that in some ways athletics is limiting access to an education for students, and when the benefits are mostly for the community and alumni who are more gung-ho about these things?
Probably, definitely at like kind of the mid-major schools, the smaller schools. They're trying to compete with the large schools like Ohio State, etc.
Right, and Dave, what's wrong with that? I mean, so what's wrong? Everyone, Old State U. Why can't we just be like Ohio State? What's wrong with striving?
Well, because it's not the mission of the university. Ohio State long ago sold their soul. Other universities trying to get to that will destroy their infrastructure by trying to do something that they can't be. It needs to be okay to win MAC titles. It needs to be okay to win Mountain West titles, and on occasion, maybe you scare people nationally. But on the access model, like you said, I think it's interesting that Barack Obama spoke in the State of the Union about we got to lower tuition, student loan forgiveness, but yet a high percentage of people's student loans are from athletic fees, and that's not being addressed. And the article that you and I worked on, which should be published here soon, talks about that very issue. These costs are going up, and it will limit affordability and access to college if people desire to do that.
John, you get the last word.
Well, I think athletics run amok is something definitely that needs to be addressed in higher education, and if we don't, it could cause a lot of trouble down the road for future generations of students.
Definitely.
We are heading for a train wreck.
Train wreck America, train wreck ahead. Read Tainted Glory. I think a lot of people need its message, and it's something that is way overdue. Tainted Glory.